want to talk about my accommodation plans for the future. In case you don't know anything about me or if you're new to this channel, I've been mostly unemployed for the last 5 years, pretty much due to ageism, and I'm now 64, so let's get started. Things are looking pretty uncertain at the moment, mostly because my savings are slowly draining away and most of the expenses involved are in paying rent. So first let me talk about the Australian economy for a bit. So since about 1999 we've had a very sharp incline in the price of property, and which has steadily been going up far in excess of the inflation rate and also the wage rate. And when COVID hit, for some strange reason, property prices skyrocketed. So we've now got a real division in Australia where people who own real estate are rich and people who don't are poor. So it's a real division that seems to be growing. So let me give you an example. Where I'm renting now, when I first started renting here about 10 years ago, it was the price of, it's a townhouse, so the price of a townhouse was about mid 200, say $250,000 to buy. And someone was selling a townhouse just like 4 townhouses up, and I went and asked how much they're selling it for, and they're now selling it for $700,000. So where I'm renting now, even though I personally know the owner, they've been jacking up the rent to be in line with the current market rate. But what they don't tell you is when they bought it, they probably would have got a loan for about $200,000. And I just went and looked it up on a calculator on the internet, and to pay back a $200,000 mortgage is about $1,198 per month in repayments. So the owner is now charging me $450 a week, which is close to about $2,000 a month. So I'm actually making almost double mortgage repayments for the owner. So you tell me who's getting rich and who's getting poorer. So that's a very big division in wealth in Australia now. The other problem we have is the immigration problem. So the current government have seen the idea of fixing our, because real estate has gone up so much, a lot of people have migrated out of the big cities and started moving into their country properties. So there is now a rental crisis where there's a situation where a lot of people are living in tents around Australia because there just is no accommodation. So the government's solution to this was, let's get more immigrants in to build the houses. So they've brought in about 700,000 immigrants this year to build houses, and the number of houses they've built is far, far below what the people seeking houses is. So it's actually not getting any better, it's getting worse. So there's that problem. Also, Australia has a foreign land ownership policy. So I did some part-time work for a real estate valuer, a couple of weeks work, and I got to see when you buy and sell properties and do valuations on it, you get to see who the owners are and the buyers are. And I can tell you what, almost none of the owners of a real estate here are actually Australian residents. So a lot of people from overseas are investing in properties here and I guess pushing the price up. So the media like to tell you something different. They like to tell you, oh, there's so many boomers, they've got so much money and they bought lots of properties when they were young and now they're ripping us off. And yeah, that might be true a bit of the time, but it's, from what I could see, the majority of Land ownership is not that age group and not those type of people. So that's the other issue. So the area I live in Brisbane, Australia, is an area that's probably a bit over 100 years old. So there's a lot of 100 plus year old worker cottages. So it used to be a workers area 100 years ago, but now it's become more trendy because I guess now that the city's expanded, it is probably just halfway out of the outlying suburbs. So the average prices of houses here now, they're all over $1 million. So even for some old house that really needs to be renovated, they're fetching well over $1 million, and we're talking about small houses on small land. So I don't want to be part of that. Who's going to give me a mortgage at my age for $1 million? So the case now is a lot of younger people have to save up for more than 10 years just for a deposit on their house. So you can imagine what sort of a chain they have around their neck in paying the mortgage back. I've got no hope of getting a house here anymore, so I've resigned myself to that fact. And another inconvenient thing the media doesn't like to tell you is they tell you how many people are coming into the country to fix our problems, but they don't tell you how many people are leaving the country. And guess who those people are? Mostly younger people, because like I said, they don't want a mortgage around their neck, a huge mortgage, so they go overseas to much cheaper countries. So that made me start thinking, well, I'm not going to make double payments on the owner's rent, so I've already set the plans in motion. So I'm going through thinking about what to do. So I can tell you what options I've looked at so far. The first option was to go buy a caravan and go live in the country somewhere. So that was one option. Another option was to go buy a second-hand bus, one that's been refitted out with bathrooms and showers and all that type of stuff. The other option is go live somewhere near the desert where I'm guessing land is still cheap. I find that's a bit of a last resort though, because once you get out there it's very hard to get back because prices don't move and real estate moves very, very slow out inland. And the other option is just to move overseas. So I had a look at caravans first. So I had a look at some of the popular websites that sell caravans, and straight away I could see how much they were, and I can rule that out straight away. They're just too expensive. I mean, even a second-hand caravan here is about $50,000, and I'm not talking about a big one, I'm just talking about an average one. And then you need a big car to pull it around, and I do have an SUV, a 20-year-old SUV, but it's not a big one. I mean, it could probably pull a small caravan, but not a big one. So I thought, well, that's out of contention. The other option I looked at was buses. So that seemed like quite a good idea. So you can get a second-hand bus that's been refitted, quite cheap actually. When I mean cheap, I mean about, say, $15,000. Granted, these buses have a lot of mileage on them, and I'm not a bus mechanic, so I'm not sure how much mileage these diesel motors can go before they need to be refitted or reconditioned. But a lot of them had at least 500,000 kilometers on them. So that's one option I'm toying with. I would probably have to resign to living in a country area because I just couldn't imagine driving something like that around in the city and finding somewhere to park. So that was the other option, is in the country at least you got your options and where you can stay and where you can sleep, and maybe somewhere cheap or even for free. So that was one option. the other option was just moving overseas. So I did some research on it, and I found that there's been quite a few older people, people my age, doing the same thing. It seems to be mostly Europe or South America, and some particular countries in Asia like Thailand and Indonesia. Other countries like Singapore are expensive, almost as expensive as here, so that's not really an option anymore. So then you have to start thinking about the climate. Do you want to live in a hot tropical climate, or you want to live in a cooler climate? So I had a good look at the houses for sale in Europe, and I found a website, realestate.com.au/international, and it lists all that you can pick the countries from around the world where you can buy real estate. So I found there's a lot of countries in Europe that are having declining populations, and so in particular areas they're selling real estate super cheap just to get the population back. As far as I know, these places don't have crime problems or things like that. They're just trying to get the population. So the first place I looked at was Croatia, but there's a whole region in Croatia where you can buy a house for $2. And I'm not talking about some junky old house that needs a lot of renovating. I'm talking about a big house, something that will cost $5 million or $10 million in this country to buy. And there's a lot of houses like that. Czechia, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Italy. Italy has quite a few houses, maybe about the $20,000-$30,000 mark. Most of them are very old stone houses, so they do need a bit of maintenance, but still, it's a fraction of the price that you would pay for real estate over here. Spain seems to have a whole region near Granada where they're selling houses for about $1,500. A bit like Croatia, very nice houses. Some of them have got beachfront properties. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So let me know if you know why these places are so cheap, because I can't believe these first world countries are telling us the full issue in why these houses are cheap. I know it's not, I don't think it's the crime rate, because I looked up the website on the safest countries in the world, and these are generally safer countries than here, so I'm not sure what it is. It could be an employment problem, but I don't care about that since I'm not employed anyway. I couldn't care less about that. And the other thing I've noticed with all these places in Europe is day-to-day bills are much cheaper than they are here. So food, wine, meat, insurance costs, internet, fuel, cars, everything like that is much cheaper than here. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but in the 90s I was working at home, so one thing I did was I went to the US and stayed there for about 6 months just to see what it was like, and one of the first things I noticed is how cheap everything was over there compared to Australia. I mean, the price of electronic goods and the price of cars, at least half the price of what they are here in Australia, and then you factor in the exchange rate and we're paying like even more than twice the price. So it makes me wonder how much we're getting ripped off over here. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm going through all the different countries. Also, my wife's from South America, so I've noticed they have some expat cities in various areas around South America just set up for people like me to retire in, and those houses are far cheaper than here. So so that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm toying with different YouTube channels and toying with work, but I'm also slowly doing research on all the options on where to live. The one bad thing in the back of my mind is I know a lot of these cities in regions in Europe are having migrant problems now. So I know France is over here anyhow, they list it as a no-go zone. So unless you have a urgent desire to go to France, don't come here. So that's how bad the problem is, and the media don't want to talk about it. So it's the same where my wife lives as well, in Ecuador. When I was there last, it was reasonably safe, but now because of all that trouble they're having in Venezuela, which I'm sure half of you probably never even heard of, because again the media likes to cover this stuff up. A lot of people have fled Venezuela and moved into neighbouring countries, and now there's a lot of criminal gangs going around causing a lot of trouble. So that's my plans. Tell me what you think, and tell me what plans you've carried through. So I have noticed on looking on YouTube, there's a lot of people, especially younger people, who live in their cars, and they make a living out of making YouTube videos about what life is like in their cars. Could be legit, could be all show, who knows. Yep, so let me know what you think, and as always, I hope this is enlightening for somebody, and if you're in the same position as me, please look at these overseas real estate prices. You'd be surprised what you can get for a very small amount of money if you're willing to move overseas. So I'll try and find more links and put them up in the description.